So these rituals are simple. They're literal. You just read them in the Sanskrit and it's sometimes hard to figure out what the ingredients are because the nouns are weird, but they're really simple. It's like you get this and this and this, and you do this and this and this with them, and you say this mantra, boom. So what I'm arguing here that they're literal. Some people have gone back and sort of interpreted these as being sort of figurative. Like when you're doing a murder ritual, you're actually trying to murder someone's bad karma, or you're only doing the murder when it's time, when someone's going to do something so bad they'll endanger their soul. No, these are literally, when it says you're trying to seduce someone, you're trying to seduce someone. And when you're trying to eradicate someone, get them to leave forever, that's what you're actually getting. You're looking to subjugate them, making you a slave. That's it. You're not subjugating their ego so that their great soul can manifest or something like that. It's also not stage magic. It's not prestidigitation. It's not legerdemain. It's not the linking rings. It's not sawing a woman in half. It's not stage magic. In any way, these, as I said once again, when I was saying that the rituals were simple and literal in the sense that they are not visualized, they're physically enacted. You will see later texts that describe acting out these rituals sort of in your mind or in your heart. What are some of the things you do in these rituals, though? Is drawing magical diagrams called yantras, offering spells, so speaking spells, or mantras, combining substances together, creating empowered items, offerings into a fire, which is called homa, tribute offerings, or bali, so that's making an offering to an entity to get them to do what you want, conjuring up semi-divine agents or tutelary deities. As I said, it's not staged magic. We have a wonderful word called jadugar for a sort of staged magic. And in India, you have a long tradition of magic being done on the streets, and a less long tradition, last like 100, 150 years, of Indian conjurers who dress sort of like in tuxedos with turbans and do large-scale magic tricks and illusions. So scholars have argued kind of across cultures, and this is maintained here, that magic is illegal. It is always considered illegal. Well, we see in the Manusmriti, one of our earliest texts of Sanskrit sort of legal traditions, that sorcery or abhichara, malicious conjuring, kritya, malicious, that's like creating evil creatures to send against someone, and root magic, or combining substances, or root cutting is what we call it in English. It's mula karma there in the Sanskrit. So it's literally like making stuff with like roots, so herbalism and whatnot. Later sources will argue that that magic that causes death, if someone is found to discover or is discovered to have performed a magic ritual that killed someone, then you kill that person. If it hasn't killed someone, then they get specific fines assessed to them. So magic is sort of overall illegal. What are our sources here? Well, our sources here that I'm drawing from is from a body of text I call the Ud corpus. Now, you'll see these really long, wacky Sanskrit names, but just listen to them. Udisha Tantra, Udameshwara Tantra, Udamara Tantra, Virabhadra Tantra, that's off a little bit, and the Damara Tantra. They all have that Ud sound in them. So I just call them sort of the Ud corpus. Now, these are primarily tantras, and when I'm talking about tantras, I'm talking about texts that sort of start in the early medieval era that present sort of hyper-ritualized form of religions. If anything that the tantras really do more than anything is they describe a ton of rituals. The reason why I connect all these texts together is because various versions of this text, or this, I mean almost this text, are found under all sorts of different names. So I can find an Udameshwara Tantra that looks like an Udisha Tantra that looks like an Udamara Tantra, or what I see in those. So there's no way to actually pull them apart because their contents overlap so much. So what I think was going on when these texts were written is it was almost a genre of texts that were on sort of these magical practices. And then people would just slap a title onto them, usually one that started with Ud and was like Udisha or Udameshwara, Udamara, or Udameshwara. All right, so that was some really convoluted Sanskrit, and I actually didn't even pronounce all those words properly because they're hard for us to hear if we're not used to hearing them. But these are lovely, weird little texts. So you can see on the left, these are some Sanskrit manuscripts. You can see that they're all handwritten. We didn't have printed texts of these until like the late 19th century. And when I'm doing a lot of my research on them, I use these sort of handwritten tantras. these handwritten texts. And then you can see them, how they're in a long stack and they're loose leaf. They're not bound in any way. So even the word for a text is called granta, which refers to the string called sutra that goes through the hole in the middle of the text that holds them all together. So when we're talking about text, we're not talking about books in the way that we think of them. All right, so what are the 6 results, the first part of India Magic that I'm going to talk about? Well, whether there are 6 of them, 8 of them, or 88 of them, they're still called the 6 results. I've looked at Shatkarmani Udisha texts that have upwards of 60 types of rituals that they call the 6 results. Now, there's something similar to this. In the yoga traditions, you'll hear about a Shatkarma or a Shadkarma, but that refers to 6 preliminary practices that one does before practicing Hatha Yoga. So cleaning the mouth, specific types of bodily activities and whatnot. There are also sometimes under the Shatkarma, you'll see 9 to 90 different initial practices, but they're all just called the 6 acts. So overall, here's the quick list of the Shatkarmani that we'll be talking about today. We have Shanti Pusti, which means tranquilizing or increasing. Vashikarana, so subjugating, making someone your slave. Stambhana, immobilizing, halting movement, or causing something to become ineffective or impotent. Mohana, bewildering. Vidveshana, descent. Uchattana, eradicating. Akarshana, attracting from a long distance, and murder, marana. I've selected these 8 because one of the main sources that I've worked on, one of the Udisha Tantra that I most enjoy, and I've almost just decided to use as my main text to compare everything to, lays them out in this way. But all the other texts will have different lists of 6, but somewhat in this order.